Hey, hey, welcome to Film Fanatics, three film geeks discussing movies both new and old. My name is Dan.
My name is Justin.
And I'm Joe.
This week, both holiday blockbuster season and awards season are upon us, so we review some of the biggest titles in both categories. We've got Pixar's The Good Dinosaur, the latest in the Rocky series, Creed, and award hopefuls Spotlight and Room. And in our home media moment, music biopic Glen Campbell, I'll Be Me. Old Classic Holiday Month continues. We've got Joe's pick, Batman Returns. Interesting selection for the holidays. And our Oscar A to Z this week is 1939's Beau Geste. With Pixar releasing their 16th movie this week, it is time now, not now, but later in the show, to count down our top 5 Pixar features. So let's kick it off with that new Pixar movie. That's The Good Dinosaur. Joe?
Now, it's interesting to note, as you guys know, but some listeners may not, I guess, that this is the first time Pixar has done 2 movies in 1 year.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's interesting. And we had Inside Out earlier. So
they didn't do any last year.
Yeah, and I guess maybe they would have released Inside Out maybe late last year and then waited?
They were supposed to release Good Dinosaur earlier, and then it sort of got shuffled. Yeah.
That makes sense.
A lot of things happen there.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, The Good Dinosaur, or The Bad Human, I think would be more appropriate, is this recent computer-animated adventure comedy drama, which is the Wikipedia one. But in all honesty, I'm going to tag Western in there as well.
A little bit.
I would agree.
Because I picked up on it earlier in the film. Like, are they going for that? And then towards it, oh, wow, this is kind of a Western movie. All right, interesting. So, features some voice talents we know of. We got Sam Elliott there, Anna Paquin, Frances McDormand, and Steve Zahn. Now, it's this epic journey, or, tries to be, of this world of dinosaurs if a meteor that supposedly crashed and killed the dinosaurs had missed, and so the dinosaurs have become kind of more intelligent and semi-civilized. And humans have grown as well, we find, but they're still a little earlier in their development. And there's an apatosaurus named Arlo, the main character, who, after getting separated from his family, makes friends with a human who he treats kind of like a dog, a pet, which is ironic. And he basically make his journey, making up for what he believes to be his father's death. That's kind of a spoiler, but it's a Disney movie. I called it 5 minutes in.
That happens pretty early on, though.
I called it. So I think it's worth talking about, as well as he finally can make his mark. That's kind of the literal and figurative moral for his growth. In terms of the basic story, it is pretty basic. It's very, very standard story, but the execution was very interesting. The concept that they demonstrate in this movie was not what I expected, and that's once again with the marketing. I went in thinking, okay, The Good Dinosaur. What was I thinking? There's this kid who's getting the main character, maybe makes friends with the dinosaur pet, but they totally reversed that, and I thought that was actually really cool. So I was kind of surprised by that. That was kind of different. I thought that they were doing something honestly different with dinosaurs, or at least hasn't been done in a while. Dinotopia was kind of like that, but that's a whole other thing. Still, it's a fairly unique way to portray it. And I do think that the voice acting was good. The animation's nice. I think that the story holds together well. And that sounds like it would be like an okay movie. But what I think holds it up a little bit above that is that from a thematic perspective, this is actually one of the most ambitious Pixar movies because it really tries to tackle a lot of intense stuff. I mean, this one tackles death, personal responsibility, not fitting in, just race relations, and honestly some really dark moments. I mean, you've got some psychopathic bad guys out there, and you've got the main villain, which I guess would be basically fear, which I think is a message, and you've got the storm kind of symbolizing that. I thought that was really interesting. So in terms of ambition, I got to give it a little more points for that, but I can't pretend that the execution of all of them works well. Like, there are some scenes that are a bit awkward. I feel like they were trying a lot of interesting things to make this, ironically, even though it's packaged like this kids movie, it has some of the most adult elements of any Pixar movie I've seen, which is interesting. Like I said, I don't know if it's the most even ride, but I give it points for the subtlety and for trying to really tackle a lot of heavy stuff. So I leave this one with a B+.
Okay. I do think there's very mature themes here. There's no doubt about that. But, you'll get this in, I would say, virtually all Pixar films. But I think that the specific themes in this harken back to some of the Disney classic films. You've got the big death in the beginning.
Really early.
Really quite early. A lot of things about, like you said, like fear and different things. There's a drug tripping scene which sort of harkened back to Pinocchio and some of the other classic Disney things. I think the animation here is gorgeous. It's probably the most realistic landscape type stuff I've ever seen in an animated film.
I'm actually glad you brought that up because
Even above like How to Train Your Dragon.
the animation is very good, but I think the thing that impressed me the most for the animation was the water. The water looked real.
The water,
Oh my gosh.
but I thought the rocks looked real too. The little details in the mountains and stuff. I thought that all looked really good. I mean, the characters obviously did not look very real.
No.
I think Pixar still struggles, and I think a lot of computer animation in general struggles with people. And the dinosaur looked cartoony, but the landscapes themselves looked completely realistic. But I do think it's surprisingly formulaic for a Pixar movie. You know, Pixar sort of prides itself on telling these original stories and this and that. This to me seemed like a kind of a cross between Finding Nemo and Cars. You know, in both situations, the main character has sort of traveled away from the pack, and in Finding Nemo they're looking for him, and in Cars he's kind of looking to get back to his thing, and same thing here. So I thought that was a little bit formulaic, but there are some emotional scenes, of course, like you always get with the Pixar movies.
Naturally.
I do think that this is more kid-friendly than a lot of Pixar movies. I think this is probably more for kids than it is for adults. I think the adult humor is more akin to like a DreamWorks movie, like a Shrek, where there's like a couple of body lines here or there, the drug tripping scene.
Well, you know what?
Calling the chickens cluckers.
Well,
Yeah.
I do agree with what you're saying in the sense of the general story and execution, but there are just certain things, certain scenes and lines in this movie which are more akin to adult audiences. Like there's a scene where Sam Elliott, the Triceratops, is talking about bathing people in his own blood. That's not exactly family. That's probably the darkest line uttered in a Pixar movie.
That is very dark.
And I mean, stuff like that stuck out to me. Like,
You're right.
there are scenes that were literally like picked out from a Western movie, but with animated dinosaurs.
The Western stuff, you're right, I guess is more akin to an adult audience.
I'm not saying that's the whole
like
movie.
Rango, for example.
Similar, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a bad comparison.
But I leave The Good Dinosaur with a B. I think it's, for another animation studio, would be pretty good. For Pixar, it's a little substandard for me.
Okay.
Justin?
Well, it's interesting, Joe, that you kicked this off by talking about ambition, because that's pretty much what I call in question here. What happened, Pixar? I mean, everything up to this point, there was some degree of ambition. Wally, you had basically them going against big businesses. With Inside Out, you had basically a psychoanalytical story, character study with comedic undertones. This is just so ridiculously bland and by the numbers. I was frankly kind of disappointed. I didn't put much stock in this because there was clearly trouble in the Mouse House a year in advance with this, and the pitch that they gave more or less sounded like an Ice Age ripoff. The story does play out better than it should. There are some interesting themes here, but they're so wildly inconsistent, just like the animation. There are some gorgeous landscapes, and just the background is stunning, but then you have these really, really cartoonish, subpar dinosaur animations that go juxtaposed with it, and it kind of cancels each other out in some regards. The characters are better than I thought they would be, but it seems like a very underdeveloped script with so many scenes playing off like filler. Like, probably my favorite scene in the entire movie is this interaction between Arlo and Spot, where they're talking about family. And it's a really great scene, but then you'll have the drug tripping scene, which is horribly out of place in a family film.
I thought it was funny.
I thought that was a little odd too.
No, it's definitely odd. That's why it's sort of all over the place.
Well, yeah.
It's all over the place. It ran on entirely too long. And then you have that weird Triceratops scene, which I get why it's there, but it needs more staying power.
Well, they should have had him come back or something.
Yeah, like give us some degree of a callback with that. It's not a bad film, but I'll be honest, it's probably the Pixar movie I'm the most frustrated with and conflicted on. But for the animation, some decent ideas and some fairly emotional scenes, I'll leave The Good Dinosaur with a B.
All right, I'm going to bump mine up to a B+ then, because I liked it way more than you did. I mean, you were kind of hating on it there about a lot of things. I mean, I agree with some, but I think, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I do agree that I guess it's not the most ambitious story for Pixar, but I
think it's a very basic story.
It's a very basic story, but once again, though, one reason I didn't bother me that much is because sometimes simplicity works. Sometimes you need that, and I think that every Pixar movie they make doesn't have to be this grand, bold, challenging thing.
I agree, and Cars wasn't either. I mean, I liked Cars.
Sometimes simplicity can work, and I'm not.
But it
saying,
has to come together.
I don't think it was as fluid as it could have been, for sure. There were definitely a lot of things they were trying. Some worked, some didn't. But there are some really good scenes in this movie. That, I mean, you can feel some of the pictures. Like the scene with the family describing that is probably the most, like, heartbreaking scene in the movie. True, but that is, like, 3 minutes?
It's like 3 minutes, and then you'll have, like, 3-4 scenes that follow that are underdeveloped or just flat out you could excise them from the movie completely and not miss a thing.
No, like I said, I think there's good things about it for sure. But for me, it didn't have as much staying power. Like, and it's been a couple days since I've seen it. It's already kind of fading a little bit for me. Whereas Inside Out, I can still very clearly remember.
Yeah, that's true.
Though I did see Inside Out twice, so that may not be completely
that might
help a little bit. But I think that's a significantly better movie.
Oh yeah.
But then again, also trying something very different too.
I really wish this came together more, but I'm not surprised that it didn't. It didn't look like it was going to quite have that panache that most of the Pixar movies do.
And that's what kind of worries me about the whole, we're going to try and churn out 2 movies a year. That's great. Pixar works as well as they do because they spend so much time churning out these stories. I mean, they nixed their Newt project because they were afraid it was going to have too many parallels with Rio. And I really wish they had taken the same page with Good Dinosaur.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, a lot of those in the pipeline are of the sequel variety. How about the short?
I'm glad you brought it up.
I thought it was cute.
Might be my favorite short, actually.
Is that right?
Well, I mean, I like the fact that it was, they said based on a true story, kind of, and then they included that, which felt well. Okay, for me, you could probably relate this a little bit, Justin. For me, I mean, I was okay. What is this gonna be? And then it's a kid watching some superhero cartoon with a VCR, so it's obviously the '90s.
Love that.
And then you've got like him, kind of like when this spiritual altar with his parents, which I could kind of relate to, and then fusing that together like a kid imagining stuff, and with the anime battles, which was obviously influenced. I'm like, that was pretty awesome. I thought it was beautifully animated, and I thought it was actually pretty awesome. It was a very good
I thought it told a very, very nice story.
Like I actually,
a good family story.
I was thinking to myself, I could have left the theater just seeing the short and been satisfied.
And been happy.
I would have been.
True.
I would have been fine.
No, that's probably the biggest thing that frustrated me straight out the gate with Good Dinosaur is I criticize the fact that I don't think it's as ambitious as some of their other stuff. This short is super ambitious.
That's a really cool short.
They should have just said, to heck with the Good Dinosaur, let's turn this into a 90-minute movie.
No, I think it's perfectly fine being a short.
It was.
It doesn't need to be a whole movie.
It could have been a movie, though, and been fine.
I guess.
I'm just saying as a possibility. I think they could have extended it, maybe.
Oh,
you have like some real-life stuff with the stuff in his head. Could reference Pan's Labyrinth again. So
hey, if it works.
I could see it working as a Pixar movie. I mean, they won't because it's a short and they never do that.
Right.
But I loved it. I loved it about as much as the volcano.
Lava
was good.
Oh God, Lava was real cute.
Yeah, so I'm trying.
I would say it was probably better than Lava.
I
thought Lava was very cute.
Lava was cute.
This was more deep. I guess I would say
it definitely was some deeper stuff. Which was awesome. Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on here. We've got Creed. This is the 7th film in the Rocky series. It sees Apollo Creed's son Adonis, played by Michael B. Jordan, wanting to make his own way in the boxing scene, meaning downplaying the lineage. But when he moves to Philly to seek out his father's former nemesis, Rocky Balboa, played, of course, by Sylvester Stallone, to be his trainer, his identity is eventually revealed and causes a new set of problems. Tessa Thompson from Dear White People co-stars as Adonis's love interest. There's a reason that Rocky is one of the great characters in cinematic history. Stallone, I thought, solidified that in 2006's Rocky Balboa. It is even clearer here, as the man knows his character inside and out. And even though he's relegated to supporting, you can't take your eyes off of him. He is so great in this movie.
It's a Rocky movie.
It is a Rocky movie.
Even though it's following him, it's still
and that's
a
why
Rocky
it's in the series. And to see this guy who has really just fallen off with the acting, with the terrible Expendables movies and bullet to the head and all this corny garbage. I liked Escape Plan. We all know that.
That was fine, yeah.
But I mean, come on, this guy can act,
and he can write and direct. And
yes. Now, unfortunately, he didn't write this one. He could
have seen it though.
Yeah, he had a hand in
production.
I'm sure the script itself and the molding of the story, and he was a producer. But yeah, believe it or not, he didn't write this, but it feels like he did.
I thought he did before I saw it. Yeah.
But just as he feels like he's lost everything in life that he's ever loved, he's given here another chance to connect with somebody, feel a purpose. As for Jordan, I would like to see him have a little bit more range with his dramatic acting. I think he's great in the role, but it is very similar to characters he has played in other dramatic films. A lot. Really. But I think the boxing scenes are shot brilliantly. It's as if we're right there.
Ooh, Dan.
Yes.
Not to cut him, but now what do you think about the stills with the stats?
I actually liked that.
You like that?
Yeah, I was fine with that.
Okay.
And if you gentlemen don't know, there is a one-take fight in the film. It goes 2 rounds, and I mean, it's so cool that they did that in one take.
That's awesome.
Holy cow.
The climax is about as pulse-pounding as anything I've seen this year. There's a couple ideas that aren't quite fleshed out. Some of the conversation scenes I thought were shot lazily. But Creed is most certainly a solid franchise entry. I'd say the best part 7 of anything I've ever seen.
Including Harry Potter Day.
Including Harry Potter, yep. I give Creed an A-. Justin?
Well, I guess the big question we have to take away from Creed is, can the Rocky franchise survive without the titular character being front and center? But the answer is an absolute yes. And what could have been such a generic boxing clone, Creed gets yet another great performance out of Michael B. Jordan, who manages to distance himself from both the likes of Carl Weathers as Apollo Creed and Stallone as obviously Rocky Balboa, and proof that he can stand on his own in a spin-off. I thought the boxing sequences done with this 360-degree angle motif was absolutely fantastic. Never seen another boxing movie attempt that. Mm-hmm. Southpaw, please take note.
No.
I mean, characters were solid. The storyline's fantastic. Honestly, if this is where the franchise is going next, I am completely and utterly on board, and I'm crossing my fingers for part 2. Creed gets an A from me.
No, there's no doubt there'll be a part 2. I mean, it did very well at the box office. It's getting great reviews. I wouldn't be shocked for a second if Stallone gets a supporting nod from this. Joe, how about for you?
Well, I mean, I know it's Creed, which is a great name, but I feel like it really should be Rocky 7, like calling Creed, in all honesty. Because it really is a Rocky movie, but I like the fact that they shifted, him being in the ring. He's still battling, though. He's battling, what's going on in his life. He's battling the role as being a mentor, passing the torch, and as we learn later, battle with cancer.
Right.
So I liked that. I thought that the relationship between the two of them was good. They both give great performances. Like, they just bounced off each other really well. I agree. It's probably one of Stallone's best performances in a long time. Going back to one of his main characters. I mean, really, for me, there wasn't really too much in this movie I didn't like. I mean, there was nothing I really disliked. I guess you could say maybe there were some things that were fairly standard because it is still a boxing movie, underdog thing. But it's nothing really negative I can say about that. I like Tessa Thompson a lot. Actually.
Yeah, I thought she did a great job.
I liked their relationship. I thought that felt very natural and real. I liked the Philly references that were good. I thought there was some good stuff there that I think you'd appreciate, and I liked. And I thought it was well shot. I liked the stat thing too. That's definitely getting in line with the big WWE MMA stuff that's big now. And I thought the adaptation that was good. Really, I'll be honest. It's probably like one of my favorite Rocky movies. I thought it was actually rivaling the first one. Now, granted,
really?
I haven't seen the Rocky movies in a long time. I'll admit, but I was thinking, well, this could be a contender, if you will, for the best Rocky movie. I really liked it, but for now, I'm going to leave with an A. There's not too much I could really add to what you guys said. I thought it was a really great movie.
The only reason I couldn't give it much further than an A was, I'll admit, some of the more dramatic. There are a couple of dramatic scenes that sometimes are a little overkill. The Stallone constantly going back to occasionally throwing in the stray "I'm old" jokes.
I thought they were funny though, to be honest.
Some were, some weren't. The cloud reference was a little.
I could believe that Rocky doesn't know what the cloud is.
Rocky doesn't know what the cloud is. I gave that one a pass.
And to be fair, until that horrible movie, what was it? Sex Tape? I didn't know what the cloud was. So, if Rocky doesn't know now and I didn't know a year ago, I could give him a pass. Give him a pass. He didn't
You
see
didn't know
Sex
what the
Tape.
Cloud was till Sex Tape
No,
came out?
I know what the Cloud is.
Yeah, I can believe that Stallone that Rocky doesn't know what the Cloud is.
He lives in Philly. He just sticks around his restaurant. He's old school,
I don't see him even really like watching TV or I
No.
don't think he's much in tune with.
They were watching Skyfall.
Well, that is true.
So he likes James Bond.
That's
Yeah,
true.
guess
Well,
so.
who doesn't?
No, it wasn't the fact that I couldn't buy it. It was just simply a fact that it was a corny line delivery.
I liked it.
I was all right with that.
He did say "Yo, Adrian," by the way. That was pretty good.
Of course he did.
It was awesome.
You have to.
Then he went to visit the grave.
In the most subtle way, though. Yo,
Always-
Adrian.
Always visits the grave.
2 graves, too.
Well, yeah, they're right next to each other. Mm. Well, let's move on here. We've got Spotlight, and that's with Justin.
After taking over the Boston Globe, Marty Barron, played by Liev Schreiber, tasks a team of journalists such as editor Walter Robbie Robinson, played by Michael Keaton, to investigate the growing number of sexual abuse cases among priests in the Boston area. Over the course of a year, the team comes across shocking realizations regarding how everyone, possibly even including the Globe as well, ignored the problem for decades. Mark Ruffalo, Rachel McAdams, and the great Stanley Tucci also star. Spotlight's a story with many different parts and variables. And while I never thought there were scenes that were just pointless, the task of keeping up who's doing what, who's talking with whom and for what purpose, and where and when they are, can get frankly kind of exhausting. However, this is a task that, for audiences willing to follow through with it, is filled with great rewards, with a fantastic ensemble, particularly from Michael Keaton and Mark Ruffalo specifically, bringing the heavy subject matter out in the open and leaving more than a haunting impression well after the film's done. The length is certainly felt, but it keeps moving, and I gotta appreciate it for that. It starts feeling less like a journalism movie and much more like almost like a conspiracy thriller at times, seeing how it all plays out. Some of the twists are a little predictable, but still a very, very well done movie. I'm sure I can definitely see it as a Oscar candidate. I leave Spotlight with an A.
Well, the movie is full of great performances. It deals with a very shocking and horrible subject, obviously. I think Ruffalo, Tucci, and McAdams do some of their best work here. Keaton, great as always. It gets right about uncovering a story, everything that the movie Truth got wrong, which Justin and I reviewed about a month ago. The part of Truth where Blanchett and her team were researching a story and doing interviews was incredibly boring. Here, it is so riveting. And you're right, Justin, maybe there's a lot of names to keep up with, but I think it all really falls into place very well. Every conversation is important. All of it's very believable. But the acting is so nuanced and the script keeps focus. And it doesn't, grandstand. There's no... Ruffalo kind of has a big speech moment towards the end, but it's about the reporters getting the job done, not about the let's all have a stance and stand on our pulpit and preach to everybody.
I think Schreiber's got the best speech, actually, for that.
Yeah, actually he does, which is fine because he's not actually on the reporting team.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So that's fine. I do think it's a little bit long, maybe by 5 or 10 minutes. There's a lot going on that they could maybe excise a couple of the interviews or the phone calls or whatever that maybe aren't necessary. Justin, I can't say you're wrong that the conclusion, or twist or whatever you want to call it, is kind of obvious, but I mean, it is based on a real event, so it's not like they're trying to like pull a fast one on us. I mean, it's what happened, and if it's, if they're making it a little bit more obvious than maybe they could, that's all right. I also leave Spotlight with an A. Joe?
I think it's probably got one of the best casts ever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, there's just literally all my favorite people in it that Justin mentioned. And they all do such great jobs. And, this movie actually reminded me of a lot of the stuff I grew up watching, like the 80s and 90s, like legal dramas, stuff like that. It's kind of what it reminded me of. Just the way it was shot and edited and paced. Like, grounded in a lot of realism, but still so engaging and almost epic in its scale, for sure. No, I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I mean, the only negative I could think of was I do agree it does start to get a little long at some points. I mean, I can't say that I cut much out, but you do begin to feel the length a little bit.
Maybe towards the beginning.
Maybe a
when
little.
they're starting to do some of the legwork.
That's
true.
Just a little. Maybe they can almost dive into it. And in regards to the whole twist thing, I think that's once again advertising, though not as bad. It's kind of tough because the big selling point of people are seeing it now is because of what it's about. But if you kept it a little bit more in the dark, like maybe a couple priests doing this, and then for people that might not know, there's something wrong with maybe the entire church, the whole Catholic Church. That could have worked more for the twist of the movie. I thought the twist, the way they went with that, I don't know if I felt like it had this huge, mind-blowing punch, but I thought it still worked. Like, oh, okay.
Right.
But a very good movie, very well executed. Not much wrong about it. I leave it with an A as well.
Yeah, just a touch long, I feel like.
And to be
Just
honest,
a smidge.
it's not even. It could, that might not even be a huge strike against it. It was just a little long,
Yeah.
teeny bit.
But I think it was long in the beginning. Like, I think once we got maybe a half hour in and they were really, onto the trail here, I was definitely into it from there.
It's interesting that you say that because I do agree there was a little bit of a slight drag at the start, but then come the end, it just sort of stops where I'm sort of in the most investment to see how it's going to play out, and then they just sort of cut it.
I like the way they cut it though, personally. I thought the thing they did at the ending was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I don't think there was more we needed to the story other than the epilogue, which they gave us.
At least they ended at a point where you were still really engaged. Whoa. I could have seen them, honestly, going with more scenes after that, but since it was kind of that long by that point, I think it was okay to kind of cut it because story resolved, couple facts, and then mind blown.
Right. The one aftermath scene.
Okay.
And then we get the epilogue.
I'm cool with that,
I was fine with it.
I'm fine with the conclusion. It's just one of those, I'm still invested. So I almost wanted to see more because of that.
That's a good thing, Justin. That's a positive.
Yeah,
it's a positive.
No, I mean, it's certainly no Scarlet Letter. It's just
a movie or just
the
general term.
The Demi Moore film, Scarlet Letter.
I agree with you there. It's definitely no Scarlet Letter.
No, it's definitely not.
I'm totally in agreement with you, buddy. Absolutely.
No, it's certainly not a strike against it, Joe, but
it's good to want more. I'd say it's good. When you think, I want more.
That's Joe's. That always makes Joe give it a positive.
I mean, that's great. I mean, I want more. I wish they'd give me more.
Yeah.
It'd be awesome.
I think it was long enough.
That's what I'm saying.
Personally.
I mean, maybe not even too long. Maybe it was just long enough.
All right, but let me ask you gentlemen this, though.
Please.
So, if there were to be a supporting actor win from this film, who should get it?
Tucci.
Ruffalo.
I would say Ruffalo as well. But Tucci is easily one of my favorite characters in the film.
I think the nuanced performance was from him.
I actually would agree with that. Ruffalo was great, though.
Ruffalo
Not
was good.
Normal Heart great.
That's what I mean. I don't think he was as good as Normal Heart. From the acting, I mean, it was right up there.
Yeah.
But
okay, if that's like saying that Matthew McConaughey in Mud is not as good as Matthew McConaughey in Dallas Buyers Club.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying they're still really good. I'm just saying that it's not quite as good as... I think you like Mud. Do you like Mud more than that? I don't know.
Well, of course I do.
Well, I like Dallas. I think
his performance is probably better in Dallas Buyers Club, but I don't know. I mean, it's apples to oranges because Normal Heart couldn't be nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah.
This is true.
But I think it's...
He was nominated for Foxcatcher, though, right?
Yes, he was.
You know what, though?
I'd say he was probably as good here as in Foxcatcher.
But the thing is, though, his performance in Foxcatcher was very different than typical Ruffalo. Though, it is. Which I kind of liked.
He had some Battery scenes in this movie.
Yeah. I'm going to Hulk out.
He had a couple of Bruce Banner
and now,
inflections.
I'm fine with that.
And now, Alex, our friend, should see this movie because now Batman has now been with both versions of the Hulk. So
that's true, actually.
They've teamed up.
Wow.
It's true. I mean, he had Birdman before, and now
that's true with Ed Norton. I was trying to think what the Ed Norton was, but you're right.
I guess it's in there. Man.
1 year after the other.
Joe, you're blowing my mind right now.
I'm telling you, man, more layers than Inception. Then again, most things do.
Oh!
We went there, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's move into another big awards hopeful.
Tommy Wiseau's The Room.
Let's no, not The Room, not The Room. This is an Oscar hopeful, not a Razzie hopeful. It's just called Room. Mm-hmm. This is based on the popular 2010 nonfiction book and written by the novel's author Emma Donoghue, always a good sign. Room is from the perspective of a 5-year-old boy named Jack, played by Jacob Tremblay, born in a shed that he believes is the entire world, because his mother, played by show favorite Brie Larson, was taken hostage at age 17 and has been held captive there in the shed ever since. She explained to Jack that Room was the whole world. Now that he's old enough to know the truth, Ma explains to him that they need to escape. Room is really 2 movies in one, both excellent. In the first, They are in room and trying to figure out how to get out. In the second, they have escaped, and now both have to deal with being in the real world, Jack for the first time ever. At this point, Joan Allen and William H. Macy join the cast as Jack's grandparents. There really is no doubt in my mind that Room will get a ton of love come award season, and it will all be deserved. This is a haunting film that will stay with you long after the credits roll. The performances are magnificent, and do not let the buzz about Larson and Tremblay, who are great, make you forget about Joan Allen, who is fantastic in this movie. It's the best role I've ever seen her give. But both these stories are so good at the psyche and the nuance of these characters and what they've gone through. Jack, through his complete ignorance of what's even happening, and Larson's character, who is all too aware. It's shot brilliantly. I just can't say enough about it. For me, gentlemen, it is the best film of the year so far. It's an A+. Justin.
During the acceptance speech for Best Visual Effects in the 2010 Academy Awards, Joe Lettery and the visual effects team of Avatar reminded audiences that the world we inhabit is just as fascinating as the one that he and his team created with Pandora. Room is a testament to the validity of that statement. At the heart of this incredibly complicated and fascinating story is yet another phenomenal performance from Larson and her dynamic with, I believe, newcomer Jacob Tremblay.
Yeah, oh yeah.
With just
He's only 7. can't have that much of a resume. Yeah.
We can't all be Jonathan Lipnicki, but
no, that's true.
But their dynamic with this is just unbelievably impressive, giving us a story that's haunting, emotionally, an absolute emotional powerhouse, and really just brilliant cinematography and how they find so many interesting ways to make use of this small space, particularly during, I think, roughly the first hour, to really bring
it's about half and half.
To really bring the story to life. It's an absolute thrill to watch, and honestly, if it doesn't get love from the Oscars after all the shutout of Short Term 12, something is very, very wrong in the Oscars. I leave this one also with an A+.
This has a much bigger buzz, though, than Short Term 12.
This is true.
You know, Short Term 12 was a very, very small movie. This has not only a pedigree behind it with the book, but it's got a huge buzz. Joe?
Well, I think that it's...
Don't you C minus this movie, Joe?
No. No.
Axes are grinding, sir.
Well, let's start with the good stuff.
Okay. Everything. Every second of this film.
Cue 20-minute litany.
I think that Brie Larson's great. You know,
yeah.
I'm in love with her. So, you know, obviously
she's beautiful.
She's a very, very good actress. I love to see more of her. I hope she does get more love for this. I think her performance is really good. And what's the young actor's name?
Jacob Tremblay.
Probably one of the best child performances I've seen.
Listen, he might certainly get nominated, and he would deserve it.
I think he's great. I think that it tackles some really tough subject matter. And it's shot very well. There's some good editing. It tackles a lot of heavy stuff. It's a very good movie. It's also 2 movies in one. Which is a little bit of a problem. Because, and not necessarily because they're badly done, but I feel that there's a little bit underdeveloped with both. I don't feel like we spend quite enough time in said room, which has some fascinating stuff in it. And my favorite part, when they get out and have to readjust, there are some things that could have been extended on. For instance, there's something that happens with Larson's character that I think could have been explored more, which is kind of glossed over a little bit, which I think is huge. And I think that while I was certainly on the edge of my seat wanting the best for the young child and his development, I feel like they could have extended more time with that as well, because this is such complicated stuff. Also, the resolution of what happened to the individual who did certain things, I thought could have been added on a little more as well. Let's see, what else?
I don't think we know, though, yet.
We don't know?
I don't think so, because it's still pretty early on. You know how slow the legal system is. We know that they've caught him.
Well, yeah, I hope so.
But
that's why
you're right. We don't know.
I would have liked a little more information about that.
Okay.
So it's mostly little things, for sure. I do think that there was some great performances. I think that the story was very good. I wanted some more details, which I think could have fleshed it out better. Also, I was frustrated about one particular character for his particular actions and also for the use of said actor in movie. William H. Macy is a great actor. His character annoyed me, but I guess that's not really a negative. But you waste Macy. It's basically a glorified cameo, and I thought it was
Cake is a glorified Macy cameo.
But you know what, though? I thought it actually worked more relevant for the plot, though, in that film. Not that he did a bad job, but it was really frustrating. But that being said, it's a very good movie. I just would have liked a little bit more to make it perfect. That's why I leave it with an A.
Okay.
Well, I can't say that you're wrong in that I could have used more from both of the stories. I mean, it is a 2-hour movie, but really it's 2 1-hour movies.
Or
you could make each of those movies an hour and 15 minutes.
But they play off each other so well, you almost sort of ignore it.
They do, but this is the thing, though. I personally liked one aspect of it more. I liked them getting out. I thought that was a lot more interesting. But
yes, I did too.
I feel like certain audiences will prefer one over the other. I think they should have picked one over the other, and they could have had an excellent film about their relations or getting out, or you could just make it longer. Mm-hmm. I don't really care, but, extend something. I want it more fleshed out. I'm not saying it's not well executed, but it just needs a little more of something.
Of the two halves, I definitely thought the part where they were still in the room was more riveting. Mm-hmm. Because it was like, how are they going to get out? What are they going to do? Because they try a couple of things that don't work.
I prefer when they got out.
So you like the second half better?
Personally.
Okay.
Mostly because I knew how it was going to play out.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that didn't hold a lot of suspense for me.
I guess that's true.
But I was more interested in how they deal with it when they get out, because it's much more
how
human
they deal
element.
with it in the real world.
That's what interested me more.
Mm-hmm.
The second story has more to do with, and I think they make a smarter choice focusing more primarily on Jacob Tremblay's character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Brie Larson definitely goes to supporting in the second half of the movie.
It's true, but I think the motif of this character who's only really known the world as this really, really small space,
mm-hmm.
being exposed to this entire universe.
It's crazy.
It's insane, and they do incredible efforts to give you an idea of what that's like for him.
Mm-hmm. Voiceover, yeah.
Voiceover, cinematography.
Yeah, his voiceover is pretty good.
Yeah.
The editing in this movie is great. Because we see everything, from his perspective. Which is why, by the way, she's not really in it that much the second half, because she does go away.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't really see a lot of her character because it's from his perspective.
I was going to say, part one is very much her story.
Yeah, but because they're both in that space, then his perspective still works.
It's true.
Because they're both constantly with each other. All right, well, we will see what happens with both Room and Spotlight when award seasons roll around, and next week we'll have another awards hopeful in Brooklyn. But right now it's our home media moment, and that is Glen Campbell, I'll Be Me. Justin?
After dealing with the diagnosis of Alzheimer's, country musician Glen Campbell decides to embark on a farewell tour. The documentary explores this farewell from the likes of his most devoted fans, hoping to see him one last time, his family struggling with his illness, and, of course, from Campbell himself as he gradually continues to lose touch with his memories. Chronicling the heartbreaking demise of a country icon has never felt so safe. Now, the music for this is great, and goodness knows Campbell is a really interesting subject. But the problem is, I really don't feel like it ever truly wants to commit to Campbell's character. And watching this sort of degradation and dealing with the more emotional aspects of it, we hear perspectives, we hear stories, but we never actually see a whole lot of footage. And when we do, it's reduced to maybe 30-second snippets of things that you would frankly like to see more of, particularly when so much of the story is devoted to this huge icon losing himself in the process of this tour. But one thing I did really like about this, that I felt I had to give a lot of points for, is it explores this really interesting perspective of what it means to be a fan and supporting a musician that you love, even if they're not giving it their all and being 100% all there. It doesn't feel manipulative. It speaks more to what it truly means to be a country music fan.
I think you could definitely say he was still giving it his all, though.
Giving it his all, but in a different way. It doesn't feel like they're putting him out to pasture, putting him on stage.
No.
They are there because they truly, truly do love him, and I really have to respect the documentary for taking that angle and giving a couple really interesting fan interviews about that. So, I mean, for some great music, a mostly compelling story, though I feel like a lot of opportunities were lost in the process, I leave Glen Campbell, I'll Be Me, with a B.
Joe?
Well, I think the word safe is pretty good. I thought it was a fairly well-executed documentary. I will say, since I know pretty much nothing about this guy, hearing
Yeah, you guys had never even heard of him.
the montage of like his awards and his influence, and the fact that he was on like the Carson show a lot apparently, and a bunch of his songs, like, okay, it's pretty good. And then they're like, he's the guy that made country music mainstream, so automatically that's kind of like, I guess, a strike for him and against him for me at the same time. But his stuff was actually like, you know, pretty decent, so I don't hate him. Like, he was a very good guitarist, and it's funny, they'll say that in interviews, like, he's such a great guitarist, and then even with Alzheimer's, he's still doing these solos, which are pretty good. I mean, so they're backing up the claim with footage. For me, though, I think that montage was really compelling for introducing it, and then I feel like if they had just dived full on into his journey with his struggle from a more personal way, I think there really could have been some awesome potential, and we could have learned more about him and his family, because I thought that was the most compelling element, is that this guy obviously had a very interesting life, bunch of wives, bunch of kids from different women, but they're all together supporting him and boosting his music and everything. I liked that a lot. It was very interesting. So he's definitely a likable character, but I wanted them to commit more to that. And I get trying to follow along with the tour to show that, but it felt like it was reduced to something we've seen a lot before anyway, just with a slightly different angle. And so I didn't really care too much for a lot of the celebrity members. Like, I don't care what Brad Paisley thinks. I'm sorry, you know.
No.
I know, I'm sure he's a country icon and supporter, but I just didn't think it was relevant to the main point of this movie, to show how strong he was. Let's focus on that, you know. So it was good, but I think that it probably could have been a lot better. I leave it with a B as well.
Okay. I think I liked it slightly more than you guys. Not a ton, though. But first of all, this is another, like, very sobering film that we've seen this week. This is, like, the week of the just, like, gut-punching movies. You know, Spotlight focusing on the priest molestation. Room focusing on, you know, taking the girl at 17
Creed
and
was even pretty
raping her.
intense.
And, you know, Creed had some issues.
The episode We All Need a Hug.
Good Dinosaur is kind of
Good Dinosaur, the dad dies right away. It's like, ugh.
There's not been a lot of levity this week.
Whew. Okay. No, but watching this legend disappear into the disease throughout the movie is heartbreaking. I really liked that they did focus on the chronological aspect of it. You know, they followed along the tour from that first show to the Napa Valley show, which was show number 151.
It's crazy.
Which I was actually quite surprised he made it through all of that. I do think that most of the musical interludes, though, from the tour run on too long.
They didn't need the full songs.
Like they do whole...
No, they didn't. Like, I understand showing the dichotomy between, okay, here's how the tour started, here's what he was playing and, you know, singing, and then, you know, maybe you do one or two stops along the way, and then the tour at the end. But, right, we didn't need to hear almost full-length songs, you know, every fifth stop on the tour. Mm-hmm. But I thought as it went along, it focused a little more on the disease portion and less on the concerts. Mm-hmm. I would say the last half probably is more devoted to the illness and how it affects him and his family. You see him, you know, talking with some Congress people about being sort of the face of Alzheimer's, etc. But I thought the biggest takeaway from the film, though, is that Alzheimer's cares not if you're famous or if you sold 50 million records or whatever. I mean, this guy's whole adult life pretty much is readily available on video from his concert performances and his TV shows, and he can look at them, but he still has no idea that it's him.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought that was the most heartbreaking revelation from the movie. I leave it with a B+.
All right. I gotta say, though, I like what Justin said about showing the fandom, because he just must have been such a likable guy, because I don't think I've ever seen... I mean, I guess you might have professional relationships, but like literally everyone around him is getting so upset. Like, I think his publicist was like breaking down crying, and she seemed genuinely sad about it. I'm like, his publicist cares that much? I don't think I've ever heard of that before.
Well,
ever.
By all accounts, I mean, he's a really, really nice guy.
Which is great, you know, and I think that's good evidence. Like, he's really a genuinely good person, and I like the people closer in his life, like his security guy, like, you know, the kid little kid with him.
Oh, yeah, the little kid. Yeah,
like,
little kid.
Like, I cared more about that than like the forced Jay Leno thing. I mean, he didn't care.
Well, of course, you know I hate Jay Leno.
But anyway. I'm looking at
that really bothered me.
Like, you could tell that was so staged. Like, you know, I get it's a nice gesture and everything, but like, he doesn't care.
But getting back to the whole fandom thing, I mean, only musician I can think of that goes out on stage, plays the same song multiple times, doesn't even know he's playing the same song multiple times, and the audience is just running with it.
Well, that just shows how much they love him. And I since I don't know his songs that well, I'm sure he was messing up a lot, but he was flowing along with it so well.
Right.
Showing his raw talent, I don't think it mattered that much.
Well, and that's why you'll notice that they led with the song they led with at the concert for him to come out to, because he can start singing whenever he's going to sing, and then they can change up the tempo from there. But, it's like that 6-note bass line.
That's what I was thinking. Like he could do
they
it once.
They just kept strumming the same parts over and over and over again. He got his bearings. He said, hello, Toledo, or wherever he was. Rambled off a couple of jokes, maybe.
Probably.
And then just started singing whenever he wanted to. And it worked for the tour. Yeah, I mean, obviously they worked very hard with him to do all that.
And I thought he rolled with it. I thought that was the most impressive thing, is showing, like, he's showing that he has Alzheimer's, and he's reading from the teleprompter. He's like, it's time for me to do a solo now. I got to do it.
Yeah.
So he made it funny.
Well, I was impressed too that his kids,
that much support, man.
Not only are there for support, but can actually play.
All of them are musicians.
They're not, but they're not like professional musicians. It's not like they have their own bands.
They could have fooled me.
They really just kind of got together and
they're legit.
Let's go on tour with Dad. Probably never having played, on a stage before.
Well, they were naturals.
So yeah, they really were. It was definitely interesting.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move into our top 5. We celebrate the Good Dinosaur this week with our top 5 Pixar films. Joe?
Well, with my top 5, I'm going to give an honorable mention to Inside Out. It's a very good movie. Definitely a contender. But it's so recent, I think, I'll let it sit.
Okay.
So
that's fair.
I'll lead with number 5, though, and that's Finding Nemo. I think just in terms of animation, it's beautiful. Great story. Albert Brooks.
Yeah.
I mean,
what's not to love?
There's nothing else to say there. Number 4 is Up. I mean, best love story ever. Enough said. Really good movie. Number 3 is The Incredibles, because, love superheroes, and I think it's a very good movie. Number 2 is Toy Story, because you can't have a top 5 list without Toy Story. And, so that's my list.
Okay.
Oh.
Interesting.
Dan doesn't know where it's going.
I really don't. I have a couple ideas, obviously, but... all right, well, I have an honorable mention, and that is the Monsters series. If I had to pick one, I would pick Monsters, Inc., because I think it's a little bit more emotional. Mm-hmm. But those are both great films to the Pixar canon, for sure. And I think they, like all the great Pixar movies, are sort of disguised as cute, funny movies, but have a whole lot of heart to them, a whole lot of emotional punch, and both in the series do that. Mm-hmm. My number 5 is also Finding Nemo, Joe. This, for a long time, was just one of my all-time favorite animated films. I think it's so simple, but yet so brilliant. Everybody that Nemo meets, or that Albert Brooks meets along the way, is memorable and funny, and obviously Ellen DeGeneres, the breakout character from that, is having the Finding Dory movie about her. And I love that they took a chance on her, by the way, because at the time she was not a very popular comedian. And this sort of brought her back into the mainstream. I agree, I love Albert Brooks. He does a great job in that as well. Number 4 is WALL-E. Here was, I think, my first example of seeing a trailer for a Pixar movie and thinking, well, this looks terrible. And then seeing it, and of course, it's brilliant. Just for so much dialogueless story, since WALL-E really doesn't talk, I just thought that it was so brilliant. A great use of space and everything. The message is a little heavy-handed, but I was fine with it. Number 3 for me is Inside Out. It is pretty new, I'll give you that, but I saw it twice in theaters, looking forward to seeing it again. I think it hits home every good aspect of the Pixar lineup. It's funny, it's got very emotional stuff, it's very adult, but kids love it. It's got some silly humor, it's got some adult humor, so everything works there. And number 2 is Up. I mean, there's nothing else to say about it. Every frame of this movie is brilliant. My one complaint really about it is that the last maybe quarter of the movie, when when the old man's fighting with like Christopher Plummer, that could be a little more intense, I guess. Really the heart is what's a part of this movie, not really the villain necessarily.
This is true.
It's kind of...
I mean,
the villain's a little...
okay villain, but...
I'll be honest... that's a conversation
He did
for another time. Up does kind of have a bit of a plot hole for me in regards to that, but I can mention it later.
But then he accepts the kid into the grape soda club, so
It balances out.
I mean, it all balances out. Yeah, Up is fantastic. All right, Justin.
Number 5, The Incredibles. The first time Pixar went PG and darker and grittier was worth it. I mean, Brad Bird, you gotta love him.
Yeah.
Still pretty good track record. I mean, Tomorrowland not great, but
Acceptable.
I like Tomorrowland. It was fine.
It was good. It
was all right.
It wasn't Iron Giant. Incredibles good, but it was good.
Nothing could be the Iron Giant.
I was gonna say, look who you're talking to.
But I mean, great stuff. Incredibly quotable. And number 4, Inside Out. Obviously, we've talked this one to death, so I won't beat a dead horse here.
See how I didn't put it on the list? I mean, it would be too easy.
But really great stuff, really bold angles, and I'm glad that they're not rushing a sequel on this one. Mm-hmm. Number 3 for me is WALL-E. This is one that, if you asked me to do top 5 Pixar probably a year ago, I may or may not have put this on the list because I really love WALL-E, but I also realize it's a much more adult film than I think it's a kid's film, particularly in some of its deeper themes and aspects of that. And I know just from hearing a couple testimonies, kid reactions are pretty polarized about it. But
I believe that.
Honestly, for me personally, it only gets better on multiple viewings. It has probably my favorite Pixar side character in Mo. And honestly, just really solid writing. Proof that you don't need constant dialogue to show action and emotion. And number 2, as to be expected, Up.
Well, yeah, talk about not having to have dialogue.
I mean, just absolute emotional powerhouse of a movie. Funny, heartbreaking, literally the full package. Mm-hmm. But not number 1.
All right, well, Joe, I'm real intrigued about your number 1.
What do you guys think my number 1 is?
Incredibles.
No, Incredibles is already on his list. Thank you for paying attention.
Toy Story 3.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah,
I limited myself to 1.
As did I.
Yeah, well, I thought about that, but I don't
forget it.
I like 2 of them pretty well. I mean, that's fair. You know, top 5, they are Pixar movies.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably would put all 3 of them there, really.
I really would have. They're all 3 in my top.
Well, you know,
25,
let's put it this
30.
way. You guys traded in a Toy Story movie for Inside Out. I
true.
decided, I'll talk about more Toy Story, so I get the advantage.
Okay.
No, I think the first Toy Story is this excellent movie, but I've always preferred Toy Story 3, which I think is to this day still my favorite Pixar movie. Because, it's interesting that I always had this sort of weird relationship with Toy Story, because as much as I liked the first movie, it also kind of disturbed me. So it took a long time for me to really fully appreciate it when I was younger. And Toy Story 2 I've seen once, so I don't...
I love Toy Story 2.
I know everyone says that's the best.
Classic grammar.
As the Stinky Pete, right?
Yeah.
Stinky Pete.
Got that right.
But that was 1999, and I didn't like it that much when I saw
Okay.
it. So I maybe have to revisit it. So when I went back to Toy Story 3, I just said it's another Pixar movie. But then I was reminded of how much I liked Toy Story when I was younger, and seeing these characters grow and change from a whole other perspective. And I mean, you're right. Everyone says that a different Toy Story movie could be the best. I think they're all feasible for that. But I just think this one is just truly spectacular. And I have mixed feelings about a future one, because I do think it really does have a great trilogy to it. But
Like Wes.
once again, if they do it well, I'd love to see those characters again.
Well, I agree with you, Joe. Toy Story 3 is my number 1 Pixar movie.
Oh!
I must admit, though, I always was a 2 fan.
Really?
I mean, I love all of them. For a long, long time, 1 and 2 were in my top 10 or 12 of all time.
Wow.
They're both fantastic movies. I think 2 takes everything that's great about 1 and sort of amps it up, adds to it a little bit.
Makes sense.
But 1 obviously is a fantastic movie in its own right. But 3, now if 3 was just a movie on its own, I don't think it would hold up as well as the other 2.
True.
You sort of have to go into it with that association with the characters.
That's true.
To really get the full emotional impact of the story. But even if not, I feel like it's a pretty solid story regardless.
True.
Easily.
So that is my number 1. Justin, it's got to be a Toy Story film. Which one is your number 1?
You're not going to hear any argument from me, gentlemen. It is Toy Story 3.
Wow, number 3.
That's pretty awesome.
The way I broke it down is this. I wanted to pick one because obviously if we put all three, it'd probably become overkill. One, I think, is easily the most quotable of the three.
Yeah.
Two, I think, is probably the most fun. But three just sort of encapsulates everything that I love about Toy Story in one movie. Funny, emotional, quotable, just overall really, really fantastic experience for anyone who's been a part of that journey since 1995.
I think we could all agree it's a franchise that really reaches for the sky.
And hopefully it doesn't have a snake in its boots.
Hopefully not.
No, I agree. Toy Story 3 is... It really... It took the series to a whole new level. Don't know how 4 is going to be, but I do like the shorts that they give us. You know, the one with Rex's bathtub party? That was fun.
It's good.
Another classic Keaton role, too. The Ken doll.
Returning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hope he comes back.
I mean, I decided to just do the one because really 3 of the top 4 would have been Toy Story movies.
That's what I figured.
That's true.
You know, that would be a bit much.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah. It would basically be probably 1, 2, and 4, and then Up would be 3. I feel like. All right. Well, let's move into our double feature of older films. We've got Holiday Month upon us, and Joe picked Batman Returns.
Yeah. And it's appropriate. It's definitely...
It is. Takes place at Christmas.
Very heavy Christmas themes. Well, Batman Returns is the 1992 sequel to Batman, which we watched earlier off-air, so we could get you guys prepared for it.
Yeah, I had never seen it.
Yeah, which is why I needed you to see the first one before
Sure.
you know, because they reference things directly. There's some continuity.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael Keaton, of course, returns as Batman. I still think the best on-screen Batman. And it also brings back Alfred once again and reintroduces some new characters. We've got Max Schreck, played by Christopher Walken, who's basically the main villain. He's this evil tycoon who uses the Penguin, played by Danny DeVito, and tries to integrate his plan to basically make him the mayor of Gotham City and have him as a political puppet. And you have his former secretary, who eventually becomes Catwoman, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, as she tries to get revenge and deals with her obvious insanity. So there's a lot going on in this movie, and it's always been one of my favorites. It's probably my favorite Batman movie, though Mask the Phantasm's still really up there for me. Just really great. But yeah, this one is definitely the first Batman movie, but with Tim Burton just saying, this is my movie now. Because you just, right out the gates, you can tell this is like some of the earliest signs of heavy Tim Burton stuff you'll see later with Danny Elfman, hardcore.
Oh, yeah.
You know, big time. You've got some really intricate set designs, much more gothy, the contrast of black and white. But I guess I'll talk about why I like this movie so much. I think, I will admit, it's even though it's not one that completely follows every adaptation of Batman as well as you might think, it's still very much a comic book movie and fully embraces that, but in a really unique way that's still Burton-y, and I like that. He took Batman, made it its own, and it still worked. It's still dark, it's still kind of kooky, and it could be fun, but there's definitely a lot of contrast. I think that Michael Keaton gets a little more to do in terms of fleshing out his character in this movie, which I liked. I liked his relationship with Michelle Pfeiffer. I think it's a really interesting dynamic with them, both disturbed individuals with secret lives, but trying to have some romance. I think Michelle Pfeiffer gives a great performance here, for sure. But what really stands out for me, though, is Danny DeVito as the Penguin. I mean, just utterly transforming with the makeup and also playing a really, probably the darkest character he's ever played and something very different than what he typically does. Just really blows my mind. And for me, even though I will admit the movie does have some issues, like there are some minor issues here or there, because it fully embraces the comic bookness of it, it doesn't bother me typically. Like there's some stuff that's really dark and heavily dramatic and excellent and complicated, balanced with just some really goofy, over-the-top stuff. And for me, it mostly works. I really enjoy this movie. It's a really good time. It's fantastic, especially from a technical point of view. I leave it with an A.
All right, Justin, how about for you on Batman Returns?
Well, this was arguably the first time a sequel went super dark.
Ever?
Well,
I don't know about that.
ergo,
Think about that one.
arguably.
It's an interesting statement. I can't think of a rebuttal right away. So you think it really is darker than the first one? Even with all the kooky stuff?
Easily.
All right.
Easily.
Cool.
I mean, it's definitely Burton-y, which I think in this day and age, since he's become such a part of popular culture, you can easily dismiss it as overkill. But for the time, I think it was incredible. He had a great insight and really made the material his own, which I think he did a better job then than he did now. Obviously, probably the poster child for that is Alice in Wonderland. Though, I also think that is where it kind of has its one minor setback, which is, I believe when they originally wrote this, they wanted it to be a much more direct sequel to the original Batman. So there was a lot more callbacks. There was a lot more references. And then Burton decided, okay, I want this to be more of a standalone story, but...
You know, it's interesting you bring that up, because I know that he didn't really want to go into it because he wanted to be tied to the first one, but they actually allowed him to have more control of the script so that he would do it.
Which you're right, but I mean, the biggest issue for me is the fact that, like, you can tell he wants this to be a standalone story, but then there'll be these moments where there are, like, these blatant callbacks that just slip through the cracks, and they're glaringly noticeable. It's sort of like Skyfall. If you're going to have it be a standalone story, let it be a standalone story.
Well, I mean, I guess I see what you're saying. I think it definitely could have been solid as a standalone story, but I like those little callbacks because, you know, it proves that stuff happened. Like, it worked for some of the dynamic with the romance, if you're referring to the Batcave callback. I think that was good. Personally, I thought it was a good
like
callback.
2 or 3 different instances. I think it's just a matter of consistency for me that sort of was the straw that kept it from getting an A+ for me.
Huh.
But, I mean, great performances. Definitely a worthy sequel to the original 89 film, and pretty solid stuff. I leave with an A.
Cool.
Well, it certainly solidifies that Keaton is my favorite of Batman.
That's the most important thing.
I mean, I sort of felt that way after the original.
Well, you shouldn't have had to think about it, because I'm Batman.
Yeah, Christian Bale kind of gets on my nerves anymore. Really, just as a person, but also as a Batman.
Because he's a professional.
Yeah, professional what? As they say in Ferris Bueller.
Oh, no.
Anyway, what's interesting, though, about this movie to me, in terms of Keaton, is that he almost sort of becomes a side character to the villains.
Heard that.
Because there's 3 villains in this movie.
That's true.
It's Spider-Man 3 all over again. Much better than Spider-Man 3.
I'd hope.
Yeah, spoke too soon on that. But because you've got DeVito as the Penguin. You've got Walken as Shrek, not the ogre, but the man. And then you've got Pfeiffer as Catwoman. Now, speaking of which...
You weren't too crazy about her originally.
I thought Pfeiffer started out very standard in this movie.
Okay.
Very standard Pfeiffer.
Okay.
But then... she becomes the Catwoman.
Pretty crazy, right?
And becomes the greatest part of this movie.
She's awesome.
I think she's even better than DeVito
in
their respective roles.
Okay.
I do like him a lot, but I think Catwoman really steals this movie.
Cool.
Which is a surprise, since I really didn't care for her opening few scenes.
Oh, no, she's great.
Justin, I can't agree with you. I think it's actually not as dark as the 1989 Batman.
Ooh, interesting.
Because I actually think it's an odd mix of the darkness and the serious tone of that film.
But a kookiness, too.
With the campiness of the 60s TV show. Sort of blending together.
Like a comic
book. I think
book.
it works. Yes, but it's like a comic book. And you know what it made me think is, and Joe, I think you'll appreciate this the most.
I think I'm going to.
Is that it made me think, what if Burton did the Dick Tracy movie?
Ooh.
Because you've got a lot of really kooky characters in that movie as the villains, and I think he could have Burtoned it up a little bit.
That's a really good comparison,
right?
Actually. That's a very good comparison.
So, I do enjoy this movie. I'm not quite sure if I like it as much as the 89 film, but I leave it with an A-.
Okay. I can live with that.
Definitely this and the original Keaton Batman are 2 of the best comic book movies I've seen.
Well, you know, it's kind of one of those things where you either know that because you've seen them, or you haven't seen them so you don't know that.
Right.
You know, really,
That's true.
literally, if people say they don't like it, they haven't seen the movie. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I never said I didn't like it. I just sort of, back when they were out, I didn't have a lot of superhero movies to compare it to.
True.
Like, Dick Tracy is good,
Uh-huh.
but, I mean, it's not this.
No.
You know, and I saw, like, Superman 1, which I thought was good, but I thought it was too corny.
You thought the Superman one was too corny?
Isn't that the one where he turns back time?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, correct. Stop me at any time here, Joe, but doesn't he do that in basically every movie?
No, that's the only one he actually reverses time by switching the
that's the one I've seen.
course of the planet.
So I just kind of thought, ugh. So when these came out, they were all the rage, obviously. I just sort of was like, well, I don't know. I didn't have a lot of interest. I saw the third one because Jim Carrey was in it, which, I mean, I remember liking, but that was 22 years ago or whatever when I saw it.
I mean,
so
like I
who's to
said,
say?
it's not...
It's got its moments.
20 years
It's
ago.
not, like, as bad as some people say, but I wouldn't call it a good movie.
It's probably not.
It's entertaining.
Well,
I don't even think Joe would say that about it.
It's not Batman or Robin, let's say that much.
it's the perfectly packaged, commercialized superhero movie. You know, there's enough there that you won't be totally bored with it, but it's primarily to sell toys. as opposed to Batman
Okay.
Robin, where it's just to sell toys.
Oh, gotcha.
That was basically every superhero movie in the 90s.
Not these.
They were kind of about selling toys.
Well, any movie that's based on a superhero is going to sell toys. My point is that they actually had a good story and effort behind it.
Okay,
They
that's
were
fair.
trying to tell something.
Everyone's doing a good job.
Yeah. No, I mean,
The
it's,
action sequences are good.
I mean,
a
I
lot
would-
of umbrellas.
I would give it an A+, but there are like just a couple little like plot holes that do bug me that I can't get past. But it's still like one of my favorites. I think there's just something about, I always say that I'm so atmospheric. I love good atmosphere, and this movie has that in abundance.
It does.
As I think of
Definitely.
I mean, Burton's known for that, but I really think that in terms of just that atmosphere to suck you in, it's one of the best ones for Burton in that regard. It just really is. Like, just the sweeping motions going into the zoo, and you have... And just... It just grips you with how, tragic some of the subject matter is, because even though, like, for instance, the penguin's this horrible person, his parents try to murder him at birth.
I know. Pee Wee Herman really...
Just tries to drown a
Terrible
baby.
person.
Yeah, he tries to drown a baby in this movie.
Good Herman performance, you have to say.
Actually,
for,
yeah.
For, like, his 5 minutes,
I would say.
you'd be like... When people told me that, like, years went by, I didn't know. No way.
Yeah, because he's not actually dressed as Pee Wee
No,
Herman.
but it's
So
just...
how would you know as a kid?
But it's just like,
But that's who it
much,
is.
like you hear like a few lines and then a scream.
Right.
It doesn't sound anything like him. It's
Yeah,
just-
that is true.
but yeah, no, I'm glad you guys liked it. It's
I missed the Prince soundtrack, though.
I
Wow.
will admit
You can't have it all,
the
Dan.
Prince soundtrack
I mean,
is great.
Elfman's fine, but he's pretty standard for Burton.
But this is early Elfman. This is like when that wasn't even really a thing.
It kind of was, though, because you had Scissorhands, you had Beetlejuice already.
Your hands was after this.
And
Scissorhands was 90, my
I
friend.
was going to say.
93, wasn't it?
No,
Nope,
sir.
90.
90. So, I mean, you already had a couple examples of the Elfman Burton, which is fine. I'm a Prince man myself.
Well, you can't have Prince in every movie, Dan.
Well, that's my problem
Well, you can try.
with the movie industry, really.
If there's at least one Prince song,
Is the Prince won't score every
movie would get like a letter grade up if they just had one.
You're not wrong on that.
Oh, that's good.
You're not.
Yeah,
So Purple Rain 2?
I'd be fine with that,
Honestly,
obviously.
he probably could do that.
He could do it. He could do it in his sleep. All right, well, good pick, Joe.
Cool.
Next week we will have Justin's pick for the old classic holiday theme. And right now we're going to hear from Justin on Beau Geste, our Oscar A to Z. It's a 1939 movie, that wonderful year.
Good year. Yes. Yeah.
With just one nomination, Best Supporting Actor. Justin?
Gary Cooper plays the titular Beau Geste, a man who has always had an insatiable thirst for adventure since he was a boy living with Lady Brandon and his two brothers. As the years go by and Brandon is forced to sell her most prized possession, the Blue Water Sapphire, Beau and his brothers steal the jewel and join the Foreign Legion as hardships and tragedy soon befall them. This is an epic story with a surprising amount of detail and, to some extent, even pacing. The production values definitely make up for the sort of hokey and melodramatic moments that come later on, particularly during the military segments. But for the most part, it's pretty well acted. And Cooper does a solid job in the lead. And seeing it all sort of play out is compelling stuff. You feel for these characters, and seeing them grow from these kids just trying to have a good time to these adults dealing with real emotional turmoil during wartime is a really interesting journey, and I thought the payoff for the most part was worth it. I do think it drags a little bit in the middle when they're focusing on sort of we're very, very far from home now and seeing things that we don't quite know how to deal with, but for the most part, pretty solid stuff in the Oscar docket. I leave this one with a B+.
Yeah, I thought the opening scenes were really great. I liked the brother angle. I think it really adds, a new dimension to the war pick, that they're all brothers. Brian Dunleavy was very deserving of his supporting nomination. He's one of the great early war bastard higher-ups. I mean, he just is such a jerk in this movie.
Oh my gosh.
He gave a great performance. I don't know who he is. I've never, to my knowledge, seen him in anything else. But I thought the whole cast was pretty good. Cooper did a good job. But I do think pacing is an issue with this movie. I found it definitely boring from time to time. I mean, I'm not a huge war guy anyway, but more than certain others we've seen, I did think it dragged a little bit in spots. I am curious, though, to see the, I think it's 1925 silent film version, because this is a scene-for-scene remake of that.
Ooh, really?
So I'd be interested to see kind of what the difference is. I don't know if it's still in existence anywhere or if
Hard
it's,
to say.
Lost for the ages, but
That'd be cool.
Yeah, it'd be kind of cool to check it out for comparison. But I leave Beau Geste with a B. Joe?
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you guys on this one. I think that there's definitely some awesome execution in terms of just how much they put into this. The cinematography was great. Costumes were great. I think to capture that sense of an epic war film, it was pretty awesome. Like, I loved the war stuff a lot. But
There's always the but.
But I really...
Wasn't it boring?
I liked what they were doing with cutting back and showing them growing up. I liked the fact they did that because that was pretty ahead of its time. But it was pretty boring.
It was.
The Blue Sapphire thing, I was like, can we just...
They could have trimmed that entire
I didn't
segment
really
down by
care
like
about
10
it.
minutes.
Sapphire, to be honest.
and also we're just seeing them hanging out, joking around in this house. I'm like, can we get back to the war? It's not. I just like, that's the only thing holding this back. I think the war stuff was compelling. Thought it was really well shot. It was excellent, and the acting was really good. But just like a good third of this movie that just was just. So if it would be much higher, I think for that, but I leave this one with a B as well. It was good, but I'm just like, they could have just moved some of that stuff along for me. It was dragging. The pacing was definitely an issue.
Yeah, it's weird. The beginning's pretty good. The ending is pretty good, with the exception of the sort of by the numbers conclusion.
Nah,
The middle stuff needs a little trimming, but
a little bit. A lot.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of trimming.
Easily 15 minutes out of this movie.
Definitely.
I just didn't care about the Blue Sapphire.
I didn't care at all about that at all.
I didn't care at all.
you still got to keep it in because it's necessary to get them to.
Yeah, you could get him in for other things.
Totally. Let's go because
Let's go because
we're
we're brothers and we stick together. And
yes,
you
could have saved so much time.
Do you know who played Justin, the young Gary Cooper in this movie?
Please do tell.
Donald O'Connor, future star of
Go on.
Singing in the Rain. Make him laugh in one of his first roles.
How about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I will say that's probably one of the coolest tricks in the movie was that they cut back and then it's like two 19th century ships shooting at each other and they trick you into thinking it's like this epic battle that seems out of place for the time. And then it's just two kids, toys. That was
cool.
That was really good.
Well shot.
Really good.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow, that's actually pretty impressive. So that was good.
Yeah.
There's good stuff in it. Just a little boring sometimes.
Gotta cut it.
Cut it down.
Cut it down. Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, that is going to do it for the show this week. Joe, you're doing a lot of interviews on your channel now for the Monday news features.
Well, yeah, I just kind of wanted, it's basically an excuse really for me to talk to some of my friends in a different way, maybe introduce some of them to other people, get YouTubers that are into comics or anime and just other geeky stuff. And so it's mostly people in my other collab group, but I'm trying to reach out beyond that, and I've actually got a minor YouTube celebrity that'll be coming on soon. Somebody I used to watch years ago, so that was pretty cool. I got in contact with her, but I'm releasing them weekly, so it'll probably be a while before she's up.
Okay.
But I've recorded probably 4 or 5 more already.
That's awesome.
I've still got to get other people too. I'm trying to promote stuff that other people have going on. So
cool.
It's been fun.
And of course, we're doing the Boldly Going Star Trek series on your channel as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to upload those consistently too.
Yeah. And we are up to, I think, 106 subscribers here on our channel.
Yeah.
So keep those numbers coming in, guys. If you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and do that. And if you have, tell a friend, get them into the Film Fanatics spirit. We also have the Facebook group, Film Fanatics with an exclamation point, and the Twitter feed at Film Fanatics Pod. So thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you back here next week. Bye.